Okay, it says I'm live, so hey, apparently we are live. Hello, everybody. And yeah, the title is provocative, I know that, but bear with me on this. I've got some thoughts, I'm trying to organize them, and I may do some more polished videos on this later, but I just want to throw this out there. And first of all, before we go any further, what's up, Williams? Hey, Mikey Mike. Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, really do appreciate your likes and subscriptions and comments and all that stuff. So, yeah, hit the like button. I'd appreciate it. If you do like what I'm talking about today, you may not. What's up, Brad? So let me just say before we go any further, I'm going to acknowledge something before I even get into the topic. There are some terrible older DJs out there who, if they haven't hung it up, they should. Should have done it a long time ago, kind of thing. I acknowledge that. But I do think that older DJs typically have the potential to do it better than, say, a younger DJ. And it's one of those things that I didn't work my way from the perspective of being 50 years old and have been DJing since 1984 and trying to justify my existence as a DJ and thinking, oh, I'm better than the young people. I'm going to hate on the young people and put them down so I feel better. It's not at all what I did. What I've done is I've seen problems and I've tried to figure out how to remedy these problems. And I worked my way back to, hey, you know what? I think an older DJ would handle this better than a younger DJ might. And it's not the younger DJ's fault. So here's what I'm talking about. I know Mark's excited because he's old. He's older than me. I know he's really excited. What's up, Mark? Hello, Brian. Okay. So here's the latest thing that triggered me. New Year's Eve, we stayed home because that's what you do. I didn't have a gig and we didn't really want to go anywhere. And plus, this whole pandemic thing's happening. But if you know where I live on a party block in the city of Milwaukee. I live right on Connecticut Avenue, which is Highway 32. There are bars all over the place. I can see like 3 bars from my front window. If I open the door and peek my head out, I can see another 2. So there are bars everywhere. And before 2020, you couldn't get parking on my street on a Tuesday night because these bars were so crowded. I have a picture, and I can't do a screen share on here, unfortunately, but I took a picture of my block at like 11:30 on New Year's Eve, and there was parking everywhere. There were no cars on the street. In fact, I'm pretty confident the cars that were on the street were people who lived here. It wasn't bar traffic. The bars were pretty empty. I even poked my head out the door right after midnight, and there was like one drunk guy yelling, woohoo, from one of the bars. This is pathetic. And I did see shuttle buses driving around, where they were kind of bar hopping in the city, but nobody was really staying anywhere. I'm like, well, it wasn't like that when I used to go out and when I used to DJ out on New Year's Eve. It was a very different vibe. The way it typically worked was you found a place that was cool, and it was so cool you didn't want to leave. Whereas I don't think anybody was doing anything spectacular at any of these bars, so people would just continue to bar hop. And you know what? A lot of that probably had to do with the music that was being played. The same old stuff was being played everywhere. I think as an older DJ, we recognize something about music that younger DJs may not be as aware of. And it's not their fault. It's totally not their fault. It's just something that we came up with, which is that new music isn't really what you would call progressive. And it hasn't been for many years. Hip hop has been pretty much the same thing for many, many years. Very, very little progression in hip hop. If you look at the last 40 years of hip hop, you see progression from 79, 80 to today. But if you look at the last 20 years of hip hop, no, not really. It's gotten slower, but nothing really different has happened. But if you go back and listen to older music, there was progressive music on the charts all the time. And you could, hear the new singles coming out weekly, the mainstream stuff, and it was so different than what was being played the week before. It was progressive music. It was changing. There were different sounds and things were put together in a different manner. Today, a lot of songs kind of sound alike, and it seems like they go in cycles. It's like there's a year or two of kind of down tempo hip hop, and then there's a year or two of maybe more dancey but not too dancey stuff going on. It seems to be the trend. It kind of goes in waves, but it doesn't like have these drastic changes. There's no big like revolution of music that comes along that's so different than what you've heard before. It's all kind of the same. It's homogenized. Everybody's hearing the same thing everywhere because of consolidation of radio stations and such. So whether you live in Chicago or in the middle of Montana, you're probably hearing the same stuff, or close enough to it anyway. What does that have to do with anything? Well, if you're a newer DJ and you're in a bar or a club and you're trying to get people's attention and you're doing the same thing that everyone else is doing with new music, it all sounds exactly the same. No matter what song you're playing, it sounds the same. Now, an older DJ may know that, hey, I need to play newer music because that's hot. But I also need to mix in some older stuff that's progressive and different that they may like. They may know it. And if they don't know it, they may just say, hey, that's really cool, and go with it anyway. It's how we used to be. When we went out to like the cool places, not the suburban places, but the cool places in the city, we didn't have to know the song to enjoy it. I think in the suburbs, the attitude was always kind of, we need to know it. If we don't know it, we're not going to get into it. The city was different. But now it seems like the city and the suburbs are doing the same thing. They have to know the song to enjoy the song. I don't know that that's necessarily written in stone. I think that you can take some liberties. I think you can play some things that are different. Some people may know them, some people may not, but it's definitely different. And the other thing that we didn't do a lot of was a lot of requests. We just didn't do it. Today, it's all about, I guess, this pandering to the audience as far as whatever they think you should play. I don't know if it's a game of stump the DJ. I don't know if they think they're a better programmer than you are, although you're being paid to do this. They think they can come in a program better than you can, which is rubbish. They can't. An older DJ will know, hey, okay, I think this crowd may dig this because they're going to have more knowledge of older music, And again, older music is, progressive. If you play the staples, You Shook Me All Night Long, all that stuff, of course, it's the same schlock. But there's weirdo stuff you can play that people have kind of forgotten about. And maybe some people know, but not everybody knows it. And you can really create an interesting vibe. And I think when you create interesting vibes, especially on a night like New Year's, where you have this constant influx of people coming into your establishment, that's your opportunity to catch their attention and be different and do something amazing and not just play whatever the idiot who's drunk tells you to play. Ignore all those requests. Just play music, play cool music. Make it so when they walk into the bar, they're saying things like, hey, this is pretty cool. Instead of walking into the bar and trying to, change the vibe of what's happening. That's a suburban phenomenon. That's not what you do when you're cool and you're in the city. You just check out the vibe of what's going on in the place and you go with it. Now, it's not younger DJs' fault that they're not real, fluent with older music. I consider myself incredibly lucky because, I mean, I was born in 71. Rock and roll was like barely 16 years old, right? So I grew up listening to music in the station wagon as a baby, a toddler, and in the living room, my mom vacuumed. She always had music going on. I've always been into music. So I kind of knew all these songs and all these different styles and things. And I only had to like think about 16 years of back catalog rock and roll because really, what else do you really need to know is anything pre rock and roll? Some Frank Sinatra, maybe a waltz or two. There's not a lot. There's not this huge catalog you got to worry about. I mean, nobody was yelling for Cole Porter songs, back when I was coming up. They weren't saying, oh, play some ink spots from World War II. They weren't doing that. It was kind of the rock and roll era. I mean, that was the dance stuff. So I came into rock and roll when it was pretty young. Whereas a younger DJ, let's say somebody who was born in the late 90s, they've got a lot of time to catch it. Like, what is it, like 45 years to worry about? Am I right? Am I doing my math right? Yeah, 45 years of music to catch up on that they didn't experience firsthand. They didn't have the perspective of why it was cool. And all they know is what they came up on. So it's totally not their fault. I mean, if when I was born, there was 45 years worth of relevant music I had to worry about, I don't think I'd be as good of a DJ as I am now. It would be hard to go not only keep up with what's happening now, but to worry about that 45 years worth of back catalog and be fluent in it, really fluent in it. So that's why I kind of think an older DJ, if they don't suck, has an advantage over a younger DJ. They just have more knowledge of music and they have more of an idea of what is progressive and what is different. And, than a younger DJ might. It's just a perspective thing, and it's not a younger DJ's fault at all. It's just kind of a cool advantage an older DJ may have if they don't suck. Let me look at the comments. Let's see. I see DJ Warren P says 70s best era, I think most diverse. Well, we could argue that the music of the 70s was really good, and it really was good. And the 80s music, I personally think was really good because we were hearing all these new sounds it was technology, It was one of those things where a new synth was invented or a new drum machine was invented, and you were hearing the sound that you'd never heard before in a way you'd never heard it. And it was 8-bit sampling. It wasn't like this polished stuff where a horn sample sounded like a horn. It sounded different and weird and kind of creepy almost, but that made it cool. And people were being experimental and running all kinds of processing gear through these samples to make them sound even more different. Tears for Fears did it. Pet Shop Boys did it. ZZ Top did it. Yes did it. I want to say Janet Jackson, but it wasn't really Janet Jackson. It was where's my brain? Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis did it. Loose Ends, all these people, they all did this stuff. That was freestyle music. That was house music. That was dance music. So I think it was interesting. There's some stuff in the 90s I liked, stuff I hated, but stuff I liked, stuff in the first part of the 2000s that I really enjoyed. I even like stuff that's on the chart now. I really do. What I don't want to do is proclaim that, kids, your music sucks. My music was better. I'm better than that. I really am better than that. I'll leave that kind of talk to boomers. Boomers can say those kind of things. What I will do, though, and it's not saying new music is crap, because there's some good stuff out there, but the way it's produced, it's incredibly homogenized, and it all kind of sounds the same, and it goes in cycles. And why is that? Well, I think it's just the survival of the music business, because they can't take chances on artists. They don't really rely on sales anymore. They only rely on live performances for the artist to make any money. Downloads kind of kill things. Nobody's buying media anymore. And you've got critics out there on social media bashing anything that they think is weird and different. So nothing even has a chance. Doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell to get any momentum, because there's people hating on it before people can even hear it. That is a real thing. The Matrix 4, I saw people bashing the hell out of this movie before I even saw it. And I saw it, and I thought it was wonderful. I really did. But some people would have said, "Oh, well, I'm glad I didn't watch that. If it's terrible, I'm not going to bother watching it because some Yahoo on Facebook decided it was a crap movie." Hold on a second. No, everybody's a critic now. Everybody has a voice out. Everybody thinks their voice needs to be heard, like me, I suppose, doing this preachy video I'm doing right now. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Hit like if you can. I'd really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed, please do. It helps. Would never hustle you for dough, but I will hustle you for likes and subscriptions and comments. I do appreciate those. So thank you for that. Help an old cripple guy out. Makes a difference with that ad revenue. We will continue to rob from the rich and give to the poor to keep this thing alive. So like and subscribe so I get more money from ads. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm just going to glance over the comments. Somebody mentioned Beatles. Yeah, Beatles. I mean, I saw the Get Back on Disney Plus, and what was so cool about that was A, they were super young. B, they were super creative. I mean, just amazingly creative and prolific. But another thing that I think a lot of people may have missed, they were the furthest thing in the world from haters. They weren't hating on anybody. They didn't say a bad word about anybody. They were listening to new stuff. They were playing new stuff. They were complimenting new artists and artists who weren't as successful as them and saying how good their work was. Even the people who wrote crap press about them, they weren't saying rotten things about them. They weren't. They were the furthest thing in the world from haters. That got me thinking something else too. I think the more of a hater you are, probably the less secure you are. The less of a hater you are, the more secure you are as a person, as a DJ, as a plumber, as whatever you do. Just do what you do well and don't worry about what everybody else is doing. But there's no reason to hate. I don't know. They were not haters. I can say that about them. And I took that to heart. I acknowledge it. I recognize it. And I try not to hate myself. I really do. But yeah, it's a lesson learned, I think, from watching them. I mean, the Beatles aren't haters. What gives any of us the right to be haters? You know? I don't know, just the goofy observations. Let's see here. I'm just glancing here. I'm just glancing here. I don't see a whole lot. I play more 70s and 80s by client request. Yeah, and that's cool. I think it's cool to play the client request for that stuff. But I think it's even cooler when you can fill in the blanks, if that makes any sense, Mark. So what I'm saying is, it's one thing to play Staying Alive by the Bee Gees and You Shook Me All Night Long by AC/DC and Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley or I Want to Dance with Somebody by Whitney Houston because it was requested. It's another thing to know enough about music to be able to fill in those blanks in between those tracks. So what I mean by that is if somebody asks for a Whitney Houston track, you may say to yourself, I think maybe they might dig some Janet Jackson as well, or maybe they might like some Prince, or maybe they might like some, I don't know, whatever. I mean, it's a matter of just filling in those blanks. You know, if you like this, you'll love that kind of thing. It's what I've always called one-upping my audience. It's something I really enjoy doing. And the one I talk about a lot is the big request, and this is very simple, and you guys will know the songs. The big request that I get from, I guess it's millennials and Gen Z, is Bye 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 by the Backstreet Boys. I mean, I was like in my late 20s when that came out, but I think a millennial was probably in elementary school or perhaps junior high school, maybe high school. I don't know. I'm terrible with this, but I think there were a lot of like dances the girls did to this for like cheerleading and things, and they would do routines on sleepovers or whatever to that song. It's very popular, but I know because I was there that Everybody by Backstreet Boys is a better song. So when they request Bye Bye Bye, I'll play it. But what I like to do is follow it up with Everybody Backstreet Boys. what I see happening is I get girls on the floor for bye bye bye, but then the excitement like triples when I do Everybody Backstreet Boys, and I bring guys out for it. Guys like that one too, and even people my age like that song. It's a lot smoother. I don't know. I think it's a better song, so I play it. It's one upping the request. So you do this every time. You totally don't have to do that. Thank you so much. It's not why I'm here to hustle your dough, but I appreciate your contributions. That's really nice. But you totally don't have to do it. I don't know who's singing it. Probably. I mean, they're all singing at one point or another. But yeah, everybody I think is just a better. Try it sometime. If you don't believe me, next time you get a request for bye bye bye, politely play it and follow it up with Everybody by Backstreet Boys. The energy level will increase. Again, older DJ stuff. I know this. A younger DJ probably won't know this. But I remember it the first time around. At the clubs, at parties, at weddings. I remember that song, and it was hot. And Bye 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 is a relatively new phenomenon. That's one that people just gravitate towards now. But I don't know. Just an example of what I'm talking about. Just an example. So that's kind of my school of thought on that. I don't know if I expressed everything that was in my head, but that's kind of where I was at. Something that I was also thinking about, and I think I mentioned it in my last live stream, has to do with something a little different. But I was thinking about DJ controllers and what you can do with them. Primarily they all, there's a lot of cool effects on there, but some of the things that they do, I think of their primary functions is it enables you to manipulate the track with the little platter. Also allows you to do pitch controls, allows you to beat match, allows you to do things like loop. Like you can hit an in loop, out loop button. You can go 2 bars, 4 bars, 8 bars, 16 bars, whatever you want to do, and create these loops. Excuse me, coffee. There's an effect on my mixer that's here on the desk that has this effect called flange. When you hit it, it kind of sounds like it's going through a tunnel kind of thing. I have a friend who really is into controllers. I mean, he works for Pioneer. Jay Brenner, you may know him. He was talking about, well, yeah, I want to get into records, and I want to learn how to scratch. And I thought to myself, why? This is not what you do. You're not a scratch DJ. You're more of a club guy. It's like, well, that's what you do with turntables. Well, hold on a minute. Everything we did with controllers, everything you do with controllers today, we did with turntables a long time ago. It was, I'm not going to say it was hard, because it wasn't hard. It was just something you had to learn how to do if you wanted to perform some of the same things that you can now push a button and do on a controller. Looping, for example, involved 2 records, okay, that you would go back and forth on, and you would use your crossfader, and you would create this loop. And it's something you can learn how to do. It's not voodoo. It's not this crazy weird a skill that nobody could get their heads around. Most people, I think, can get their heads around it with some practice. If they're shown how to do it with some practice, and it's going to take some longer than others, can learn how to loop with records. But this is something you simply do by pressing buttons on a controller. Scratching. I'm thinking about the baby scratch in particular. When you're looping or cueing a record, you backspin it a little bit, to get to the beginning. And then okay, yep, there's the cue. That's a scratch. I did that on every track that I ever played for, I don't know, how many years? 10 years? As a DJ? For 10 years, I did it that way. And you can do it on a controller as well, but it's less organic. You have to try to scratch, You don't need to scratch to cue a record. You don't need to toop, toop, toop. You don't got to do that. You don't got to worry about the needle skipping. It's wonderful technology. Don't get me wrong. It's wonderful technology. The flange is something that you realize, and I want to demonstrate this, but I got to find some records that are going to flag me on. I can still do it one-handed too. The flange effect that I could do on my mixer was achieved by playing two copies of the same record right there at the same time, like beat for beat, and then you alter just a little bit, just a fraction of a second, by slowing them down or speeding them up to create this jetting effect or this flange effect. So oddly enough, the controllers really, I mean, and this should be so obvious, but I think a lot of people don't understand this, are emulating records. That's what they're doing. We did all of this stuff with records, you know? And in my world, anyway, in my world, there wasn't a lot of scratching for scratch sake. Guys like Qbert didn't really, weren't in my world. In my world, it was more club. It was more just kind of blending the tracks, coming in at cool places, having cool tracks to play. Not everybody had the same tracks like they do now. Scratching was something that like street DJs did, like hip hop guys that were in the park, or they were like members of hip hop groups and stuff. When you went out to the club, you didn't hear scratching. You heard blending. It's just what it was. It's cool, don't get me wrong, but there was so much more you could do with turntables than scratch. In fact, if you heard me scratch at a club back in the day, it was a mistake because I didn't get the crossfader over far enough or something. You heard me cue. It wasn't something I tried to do. So it was more organic, I guess, because of that. The other thing the controllers do is it perfects everything that you could do on turntables, which is nice. I like it when your end product going out to the audience is beautiful. But what I find disturbing is that there's no room for error. And when there's no room for error, you don't get those cool little nuances that you would get with error. I know that doesn't make sense to some of you. How can it be more perfect than perfect? Well, imperfect is kind of cool. The little mistakes that you make in production are the things that are gold. I think about probably the first EDM track ever, which I believe was Donna Summer's I Feel Love. If you don't know the song, look it up. It's kind of a staple. I haven't played it at a gig in many, many years, but it's a song you should know. Giorgio Moroder produced it. Was a big song for Donna Summer. I think it was her maybe third song, but it was definitely like an EDM track. And it was supposed to be like dun 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 dun. Something was goofy with the sequencer, so it went taka 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 taka. That was a mistake, but the mistake was a beautiful one, and it made it a hit, and it changed music. I mean, EDM is here; it's been here forever. It changed dance music. It changed electronic music. That taka 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 taka. If you listen to the very beginning of the 12-inch, the first like 3 bars sound like a train wreck until it finally hooks up. It was a mistake, but they left it in because it was so good. So that's what you lose when things are perfect, when nothing can go wrong. You lose the nuance. The nuance was the scratch. You didn't try to make the scratch. The nuance was the scratch. It was kind of a mistake, but it happened and it was organic. And therefore, it was kind of cool. I don't know. I've rambled long enough, though. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to kill this ish. And I'll maybe I'll do a video a little later on. But I really appreciate you tuning in. Oh, is that Jimmy? What's up, Jimmy? My friend. I was thinking about you today, Jimmy. I don't know why, but I was. And yeah, I miss you, man. I'd love to see you soon. I hope we cross paths this year somehow. I see that you're doing a lot of your live streaming stuff, and that's fantastic. And you've made a business out of that. I think that's really cool, man. Let's see here. Yeah, I was thinking about you today. I was seeing some of your posts, and I'm glad that you and B-Love are doing well, and the kids. I'm glad you guys are doing well. Glad you're happy, and your dreams are coming true, man. That's awesome. Anyway, just some thoughts I had on that. And when I do these live videos, I'm kind of working out material that I may do polished videos on later. It's not necessarily the video I'm going to do on this topic. It's more I'm thinking about it. I'm kind of thinking out loud. I'm bouncing things off whoever my audience happens to be to get any feedback you may have, and I'm looking at it. But I mean, you can argue this stuff all you want. You can totally argue it, and that's okay. It's okay. You don't have to feel the way I feel about things. You don't have to believe what I believe. But this is what I believe. These are my observations that I've made, and I don't know. Random stuff says plenty of mistakes with new equipment because arrangements are so much more complex than they used to be, especially with when you are talking about live remixing in Ableton and similar. Arrangements are less complex than they used to be, just so you know, random stuff. Arrangements are much less complex than they used to be. I tell you what, you throw me any song that you think the arrangements is complex on with new music, and I'll raise you Joni Mitchell's Help Me from 1973. There's no comparison on arrangement. Shit, I'll throw any Barry Gibb song at you. There's no comparison with arrangement. Arrangements are so much less complex. They're sequenced. They're dead on. There's no variance or variables between the beats, because even if it's a live drum, I mean, it's been chopped up to be dead on. Everything's perfect now as far as that goes. So I completely disagree with that. Well, arrangements of mixes, it's interesting you say that, because you can make a mix complex. You absolutely can. There's crazy stuff you can do. There's some amazing stuff out there. I used to love the old Edit Crazy stuff that like Bobby D was doing in the late 80s, early 90s. Just wow, it was like medleys, like boom, 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 stuff that live DJs are doing now. But they were doing it with house early on. I don't know how they were doing it. I think they might have had several Macintosh computers helping them out. I don't know, but it was amazing what these guys could do. Absolutely amazing. But it was novel. This was not something that I wanted to hear all the time. I had to be in the mood for that. That crazy mashup, this on top of that, nutty stuff. As far as live performance goes, if you're talking about production, whatever, do what you got to do. But yeah, I think simple was better. I really do. Just concentrating on the songs that you have in front of you and making them work was better than just trying to make it like super complex and convoluted with a mix. I personally feel that way. I think it's more effective to just do something simple but do it well than it is to do something super crazy. I know that's just me. That's just me, in my opinion. But I think it would serve us better to just do the little things better instead of doing the big things. The big things are just convoluted. And, I don't know. It's a lot. It's a lot. Keeping it simple but tight, I think it's good. That's just me, though. And you're not wrong. That's just me. But yeah, I'm going to turn this off. So take care, everybody. We got a live broadcast tonight, hanging with Howie on DJing TV. I'll be there. I do appreciate your likes. If you haven't liked, I'd appreciate it if you did. Your comments, your subscriptions. I wouldn't hustle you for dough, like I said, but I will hustle you for likes and comments and subscriptions, because it boosts the channel and I get more ad stuff coming in, and then I make more money that way without asking you for cash. It's robbing from the rich and giving to the poor. Keeps the channel alive, keeps groceries on my table, and I thank you for it. So anyway, again, thank you. I appreciate you. We'll see you tonight if you tune in on Howie's show. Otherwise, I'll be doing some videos tonight and tomorrow. Regular videos, not this. We'll see you soon. Take care. Practice and enjoy.